In a forgotten corner of the vast universe, where the brilliance of stars dances to the rhythm of dreams, lies a mystical place veiled in mystery and promise, the secret door to success. This text transcends mere words. It serves as a gateway to the unimaginable, a path leading to the fulfillment of humanity's deepest desires. Embark now on this transformative journey, guided by the timeless wisdom of Florence Scovel Shinn, a visionary whose words have endured the relentless passage of time, lighting the way for those who seek to uncover the secrets of success and fulfillment. In every whisper carried by the wind, in every moment of silence pregnant with revelation, you will discover the golden keys that unlock the doors to your destiny. Prepare to challenge the boundaries of possibility, to delve into the innermost recesses of your being, and to uncover the dormant magic within every heartbeat. Are you prepared to enter a realm where dreams manifest into reality and where the stars align in your favor? Then step forward, dear seeker, and join us on this odyssey through the secret door to success. Your adventure awaits. And the people shouted when the priests blew the trumpets. And it came to pass, when the people heard the sound of the trumpet and shouted with great joy, the wall fell down flat, so the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city. Joshua 6:20. A successful man is always asked what the secret to his success is. People never ask a failed man what the secret to his failure is. It's quite easy to see, and they're not interested. Everyone wants to know how to unlock the secret door to success. For every man, success exists, but it seems to be hidden behind a door or a wall. In the biblical reading, we heard the wonderful story of the fall of the walls of Jericho. Of course, all biblical stories have a metaphysical interpretation. Now we will talk about your wall of Jericho, the wall that separates you from success. Almost everyone has built a wall around their own Jericho. That city you cannot enter contains great treasures, your divinely designed success, the desire of your heart. What kind of wall have you built around your Jericho? It is often a wall of resentment. Resenting someone or a situation blocks your good. If you are a failure and resent someone else's success, you are keeping yourself away from your own success. I have given the following statement to neutralize envy and resentment. What God has done for others, He does now for me and more. A woman was filled with envy because a friend had received a gift. She made this statement and received an exact copy of the gift, plus another gift. It was when the children of Israel shouted that the walls of Jericho fell down. When you make a statement of truth, your wall of Jericho wavers. I gave the following statement to a woman. The walls of lack and delay now crumble away, and I enter my promised land under grace. She had a vivid picture of walking over a fallen wall and received a demonstration of her good almost immediately. It is the word of realization that produces a change in your affairs, for words and thoughts are a form of radioactivity. Being interested in your work and appreciating what you do opens the secret door to success. A few years ago, I went to California to speak at different centers, passing through the Panama Canal, and on the boat I met a man. For years he had been a tramp. He called himself the king of the hobos. He was ambitious and educated himself. He had a vivid imagination and started writing stories about his experiences. He dramatized the life of the hobos and loved what he was doing. He became a successful author. I remember a book he wrote was made into a movie. Now he is famous and prosperous and lives in Hollywood. What opened the secret door to success for him? It was the dramatization of his life and his interest in what he was doing. He made the best of being a hobo. On the boat, we all sat at the captain's table, which gave us a chance to talk. Mrs. Greystone was also a passenger on the boat. She had written the book called The Bitter Tea of General Yen and was on her way to Hollywood to have it made into a movie. She had lived in China and drew inspiration to write the book. This is the secret of success, making what you do interesting to others. If you are interested, others will find you interesting. A good disposition, a smile, often open the secret door. The Chinese say, "A man without a smiling face must not open a shop." The success of a smile was illustrated in a French movie where Chevalier was the star. The movie was called With a Smile. One of the characters had become poor, depressed, and almost a tramp. He said to Chevalier, "What good has my honesty done me?" Chevalier replied, "Even honesty won't help you without a smile." So the man instantly changed, cheered up, and had great success. Living in the past, complaining about your misfortunes, builds a thick wall around your Jericho. Talking too much about your affairs scatters your forces. I knew a man with brains and ability who was a complete failure. He lived with his mother and aunt. I discovered that every evening when he came home for dinner, he would tell everything that had happened during the day at the office. He talked about his hopes, fears, and failures. I told him, "You are scattering your forces by talking about your affairs. Do not discuss your business with your family. Silence is golden." He listened to me, and during dinner refused to talk about business. His mother and aunt were in despair. They loved hearing everything, but his silence proved to be golden. Shortly afterward, he was given a position at a salary of $100 a week, and in a few years, he was making $300 a week. Success is not a secret, it is a system. Many people find themselves against the wall of discouragement. Courage and endurance are part of the system. We read this in the lives of all successful men and women. I had a funny experience that made me notice this. I went to a movie theater to meet a friend, and while waiting I stood near a young man who was selling programs. He was calling out to people passing by to buy a complete program of the movie, containing photographs of the actors and a review of their lives. Most people passed by without buying. To my great surprise, he suddenly addressed me and said, "Hey, this isn't a job for an ambitious guy." Then he gave a speech about success. He said, "Most people give up just before they achieve something great. A successful man never gives up." Of course, this interested me, and I told him, "I'll bring you a book next time I come. It's called The Game of Life and How to Play It. You will agree with many ideas in it." 1 or 2 weeks later, I came back with the book. The girl in the ticket booth said, "Let me read it, Ari, while you sell the programs." The man taking the tickets leaned over to see what it was about. The game of life always sparks interest. About 3 weeks later, Ari was gone. He had found a new job that he liked. His wall of Jericho had fallen. He refused to get discouraged. The Bible mentions the word success only twice, both in the book of Joshua. "You shall be strong and very courageous to observe all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. You shall not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may succeed wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you shall prosper, and then you shall have good success. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left." The path of success is a straight and narrow path. It is a path of loving absorption, of undivided attention. You attract the things you give a lot of thought to. So, if you think a lot about lack, you attract lack. If you think a lot about injustice, you attract more injustice. Joshua said, "And it shall come to pass, when the ram's horn sounds long, and you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat." We find this in folklore and fairy tales that stem from legends based on truth, the same idea. A word opens a door or breaks a rock. We find it again in the tale from the Arabian Nights, Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, which I saw adapted into a film. Ali Baba has a secret cave hidden somewhere behind the rocks and mountains, accessible only by saying a secret word. Ali Baba stands before the mountain and shouts, "Open sesame," and the rocks slide apart. This is very inspiring because it shows how your own rocks and barriers separate with the right word. So now, let us take the statement. "The walls of lack and delay crumble now, and I enter my promised land under grace. You shall give no straw, yet you shall make bricks without straw." Exodus 5:18. In chapter 5 of Exodus, we have a picture of everyday life. Giving it a metaphysical interpretation, the children of Israel were slaves to the cruel Pharaoh, the despot ruling over Egypt. They were kept in bondage, making bricks, and were hated and despised. Moses had received orders from the Lord to free his people from bondage. Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord, God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." Not only did he refuse to let them go, But he told them he would make their tasks even harder. They were to make bricks without being given straw. The people's overseers and officers went out and spoke to the people, saying, "Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go and find straw where you can, but your work shall not be reduced." It was impossible to make bricks without straw. The children of Israel were utterly crushed by Pharaoh. They were beaten for not producing the bricks. Then came Jehovah's message, "Go now and work, for no straw shall be given you, but you shall deliver the same number of bricks." By working with the spiritual law, they were able to make bricks without straw, which means accomplishing the seemingly impossible. How often in life do people face this situation? In fact, in his advice to Bible students, Acne Seelbach says, "Life in Egypt under foreign oppression symbolizes man under the harsh masters of destructive thoughts, pride, fear, resentment, malice, etc. Liberation under Moses is the freedom man gains from overseers as he learns the law of life, for we can never enter grace if we do not first know the law. The law must be known to be fulfilled." In Psalm 111 we read in the last verse, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Good understanding have all they that do his commandments." The success of the law is eternal. Thus, if we read the law of the Lord, it will give us the key to the affirmation. The fear of the karmic law is the beginning of wisdom, not the fear of the Lord. When we know that everything we send out returns, we begin to fear our own boomerangs. I read in a medical journal the following facts about the boomerang received by this great pharaoh. It appears that the flesh is indeed the heir to a long and ancient lineage of ills, as revealed by Lord Morning during a lecture in Leeds. The pharaoh of oppression suffered from arteriosclerosis, literally. Lord Morning showed some remarkable photographic slides of the results of surgical operations dating back 1,000 years before Christ, and among them was a slide of the actual anatomical remains of the pharaoh of oppression. The great vessel coming out of the heart was in such a well-preserved state that it allowed it to be sectioned and compared with those made recently. From the slide projector, it was impossible to distinguish between the ancient vessel and the modern one. Both hearts had been attacked by atheroma, a condition in which calcium salts deposit on the vessel walls, making it rigid and inelastic. The inadequate expansion of blood flow from the heart caused this hardening of the vessel. With this condition, mental changes occurred, a narrowness of mind, restriction, and fear of enterprise, a literal hardening of the heart. Thus Pharaoh's hardness of heart hardened his own heart. This is as true today as it was several thousand years ago. We are all coming out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Your doubts and fears keep you in bondage. You are facing a situation that seems hopeless. What can you do? It is a case of making bricks without straw. But remember Jehovah's words. "Go now and work, for no straw shall be given you, but you shall deliver the same number of bricks, and you will make bricks without straw." God makes a way where there is none. I was told the story of a woman who needed money for her rent. It was urgent, and she saw no way. She had exhausted all options. However, she was a student of the truth and continued to affirm. Her dog whimpered and wanted to go out. She put him on a leash and walked down the street in the usual direction. However, the dog pulled on the leash and wanted to go in another direction. She followed him, and in the middle of the block, in front of an open park, she looked down and picked up a roll of bills that covered her rent exactly. She searched for notices but found no owner. There were no houses nearby from which the rational mind found it. The intellect takes the throne of Pharaoh in your consciousness and continually says, "This can't be done. What's the point?" We must stifle these dark suggestions with a vital affirmation. For example, take this affirmation. The unexpected happens. My seemingly impossible good now becomes a reality. This stops all arguments from the army of aliens. The rational mind cannot handle the idea that the unexpected happens. You have made me wiser than my enemies. Your enemy thoughts, your doubts, your fears, and your apprehensions. Think of the joy of being truly free forever from the Pharaoh of oppression. Having the idea of security, health, happiness, and abundance established in the subconscious would mean a life free from all limitation. This would be the kingdom that Jesus Christ spoke of, where all things are added unto us automatically. I say added automatically because all life is vibration, and when we vibrate towards success, happiness, and abundance, the things that symbolize these states of consciousness are added to us. If you feel rich and successful, you suddenly receive a large check or a beautiful gift. I tell a story that shows the working of this law. I went to a party where people were playing a game, and the winner would receive a prize. The prize was a beautiful fan. Among the participants was a very rich woman who had everything. Her name was Clara. The poorer and more envious gathered and murmured, "We hope Clara doesn't win the fan." Of course Clara won the fan. She was carefree and vibrated with abundance. Envy and resentment short-circuit your good and keep your fans away. If by chance you are resentful and envious, adopt the affirmation, "What God has done for others, He is doing now for me, and more." Then all the fans and things will come your way. No man gives to himself but to himself, and no man takes from himself but from himself. The game of life is a solo game. As you change, all conditions will change. Now let's return to the oppressive Pharaoh. No one likes an oppressor. I remember a friend I had many years ago. Her name was Lady. Her father had a lot of money and provided her mother and herself with food and clothing, but without luxury. We went to art school together, and all the students bought reproductions of the Winged Victory, Whistler's Mother, or something like that, to bring art into their homes. Her father called all these things plunder. He would say, "Don't bring any plunder home." So she lived a life without color, without a Winged Victory on her desk, or a Whistler's Mother on the wall. He would often say to my friend and her mother, "When I die, you two will be fine." One day someone said to Letty, "When you go abroad, all the art students will go abroad." She joyfully replied, "Not until Daddy dies." Thus people are always waiting to be freed from lack and oppression. Let's free ourselves now from the tyrants of negative thought. We have been slaves to doubts, fears, and apprehensions. Let us free ourselves as Moses freed the children of Israel and leave the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. Against the thought that is your great oppressor. Letty found the Kingpin in the logging fields in the spring. The logs are sent down rivers in large quantities. Sometimes the logs get crossed and cause a jam. The men look for the log that causes the jam. They call it the Kingpin. They straighten it and the logs flow down the river again. Perhaps your Kingpin is resentment. Resentment blocks your good. The more you resent, the more you will have to resent. You create a track of resentment in your brain, and your expression will usually be one of resentment. You will avoid yourself and miss the golden opportunities that await you every day. I remember a few years ago, the streets were full of men selling apples. They would get up early to secure the best corners. I came across one of them several times on Park Avenue, and he had the most unpleasant expression I had ever seen. When people passed by, he would say, "Apples, apples," but no one stopped to buy. I invested in an apple and said to him, "You will never sell apples if you don't change your expression." He replied, "Well, that guy over there took my place." I said, "No matter the place, you can sell apples right here if you look pleasant." He said, "All right, ma'am," and went on his way. The next day I saw him. His entire expression had changed. He was doing good business, selling apples with a smile. So find your pivot, you may have more than one, and your logs of success, happiness, and abundance will flow into your river. And now, work, for no straw will be given to you, but you will make bricks without straw. 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish. Those who were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. Matthew 25:2. My subject is the parable of the wise and foolish virgins. 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish. The foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. The parable teaches that true prayer means preparation. Jesus Christ said, "And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive." Matthew 21:22. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11:24. This parable shows that only those who have prepared for their good, thus showing active faith, will obtain the manifestation. We could paraphrase the scriptures and say, when you pray, believe that you have received. When you pray, act as if you have already received. The faith of "if I have" will never move mountains. In silence or meditation, you are filled with the wonder of this truth and feel that your faith will never waver. You know that the Lord is your shepherd, you shall not want. You feel that your God of abundance will erase all burdens of debt or limitations. Then you leave your chair and go out into the arena of life. What counts is what you do in the arena. I will give you an illustration that shows how the law works, for faith without action is dead. A man, one of my students, had a great desire to travel abroad. He declared, "I give thanks for my trip, divinely planned, divinely financed, under grace in a perfect way." He had very little money, but, knowing the law of preparation, he bought a trunk. It was a very cheerful and happy trunk, with a large red stripe around the waist. Every time he looked at it, he felt like traveling. One day he felt that his room was moving. He felt the motion of a ship. He approached the window to breathe in the fresh air that smelled of the docks, and with his inner ear, he heard the cry of a seagull and the creaking of the gangway. The trunk had begun to work. He had set it in vibration for his trip. Shortly afterward, a large sum of money came to him, and he took the trip. He said, "It was perfect in every detail." In the arena of life, we must stay in harmony with the tone of the concert. We act out of fear or faith. Watch your motivations carefully, for from them flow the issues of life. If your problem is financial, and it usually is, you need to know how to adjust financially and keep yourself adjusted. Always act with your faith. The material attitude toward money is to rely on your salary, your income, and your investments, which can decrease overnight. The spiritual attitude toward money is to rely on God for His supply, to maintain your possessions. Always be aware that they are manifestations of God. What God has given you cannot be diminished. So if one door closes, another opens immediately. Never express lack or limitation, for by your words you condemn yourself. You tune into what you notice. And if you always notice failure and hard times, you tune into failure and hard times. You must develop the habit of living in the fourth dimension, the world of the wonderful. This is the world where you do not judge by appearances. You have trained your inner eye to see through failure to success, to see through sickness to health, to see through limitation to abundance. I will give you the land that your inner eye sees. The man who achieves success has the fixed idea of success. If it is founded on a rock of truth and righteousness, it will stand. Otherwise, it is built on sand and is swept away by the sea, returning to its original nothingness. Only divine ideas can last. Evil destroys itself. So it is a crusade against the universal order, and the way of the transgressor is hard. The foolish took their lamps and took no oil, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. The lamp symbolizes man's consciousness. Oil is what brings light or understanding. While the bridegroom delayed, they all slumbered and slept, and at midnight a cry was heard. Behold, the bridegroom is coming, go out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." The foolish virgins lacked wisdom or understanding, which is the oil for consciousness, and when faced with a serious situation, they had no means to handle it. And when they said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil," the wise answered, saying, "No, lest there should not be enough for us and you. So go to those who sell, and buy some for yourselves." This means that the foolish virgins could not receive more than what was in their consciousness, or what they vibrated with. The man received the trip because it was in his consciousness as a reality. He believed he had already received it while he was preparing for the trip by taking oil for his lamps. With realization comes manifestation. The law of preparation works both ways. If you prepare for what you fear or do not want, you begin to attract it. David said, "What I feared has come upon me." We hear people say, "I must save money in case I get sick." They are deliberately preparing to be sick. Or, "I am saving for a rainy day." The rainy day will arrive at the most inconvenient time. The divine idea for every man is abundance. His barns should be full and his cup should overflow. But we must learn to ask rightly. For example, take this statement: "I invoke the law of accumulation. My supply comes from God, and now it pours in and piles up under grace." This affirmation gives no image of saving, fear, or sickness. It gives a feeling of fourth-dimensional abundance, leaving the channels to infinite intelligence. Each day you must make a choice. Will you be wise or will you be foolish? Will you prepare for your good, take the great leap of faith, or serve doubt and fear, and not provide oil for your lamps? While they went to buy, the bridegroom arrived, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding, and the door was shut. Later the other virgins also came, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Truly I say to you, I do not know you. You may think the foolish virgins paid dearly for not bringing oil for their lamps, but we are dealing with the law of karma, or the law of return. It is called the Day of Judgment, which people usually associate with the end of the world. They say Judgment Day comes in 7 hours, 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 months, or 7 years, or even in 7 minutes. Then you pay a karmic debt, the price for violating the spiritual law. You did not trust God. You did not take oil for your lamps. Each day examine your consciousness and see what you are preparing for. Are you afraid of lack and clinging to every penny, thus attracting more scarcity? Use what you have wisely and open the way to receive more. In my book, Your Word is Your Wand, I talk about the magic purse. In The 1001 Nights, there is the story of a man who had a magic purse. When money came out, it immediately reappeared. So, I made the affirmation, my supply comes from God. I have the magic purse of the Spirit. It can never be depleted. When money goes out, it immediately comes in, always full of abundance under grace in a perfect way. This evokes a vivid image. You are appealing to the bank of imagination. A woman who did not have much money was afraid to pay a bill and see her bank account decrease. She had a deep conviction. I have the magic purse of the Spirit. It can never be depleted. When money goes out, it immediately comes in. She paid her bills without fear and received several large checks she did not expect. So watch and pray to avoid the temptation to prepare for something destructive rather than constructive. I knew a woman who told me she always had a long black crepe veil ready for funerals. I told her, You are a threat to your loved ones and you are preparing to hasten them all so you can wear the veil. She destroyed it. Another woman, with no money, decided to send her 2 daughters to college. Her husband scoffed at the idea and said, Who will pay their tuition? I don't have money for that. She replied, I know unexpected good will come to us. She continued to prepare her daughters for college. Her husband mocked her and told all his friends that his wife was sending the girls to college hoping for unexpected good. Suddenly, a wealthy relative sent her a large sum of money. Unexpected good came because she showed active faith. I asked her what she said to her husband when the check arrived. She replied, I never saw myself telling Jorge I was right. So prepare for your unexpected good. Let every thought and act express your unwavering faith. Every event in your life is a crystallized idea, something you invited through fear or faith, something you prepared for. So let us be wise and bring oil for our lamps, and when we least expect it, we will reap the fruits of our faith. My lamps are now filled with the oil of faith and abundance. According to your faith, it will be done to you. Matthew 9:29. Faith is expectation. According to your faith, it will be done to you. So, what are you expecting? We hear people say, we hope for the worst, or the worst is yet to come. They are deliberately inviting the worst to happen. We hear others say, I hope for a change for the better. They are inviting better conditions into their lives. Change your expectations, and you will change your conditions. How can you change your expectations if you have the habit of expecting loss, scarcity, or failure? Start acting as if you expect success, happiness, and abundance. Prepare for your good. Do something that shows you expect it to happen. Active faith alone will impress the subconscious. If you have spoken the word for a home, prepare immediately as if you had not a moment to lose. Gather small ornaments, tablecloths, etc. I knew a woman who took the great leap of faith by buying a large chair. A chair meant business. She bought a large, comfortable chair because she was preparing for the right man. He arrived. Someone will say, suppose you have no money to buy ornaments or a chair. Then look in shop windows and mentally connect with them. Enter their vibration. Sometimes I hear people say, I don't go to stores because I can't buy anything. That is precisely why you should go to stores. Start befriending the things you desire or need. I know a woman who wanted a ring. She boldly went to the ring section and tried some on. This gave her such a sense of ownership that shortly afterward, a friend gifted her a ring. You resonate with what you notice. If you keep noticing beautiful things, you establish an invisible connection. Sooner or later, these things are drawn into your life unless you say, "Poor me, too good to be true." My soul, wait only upon God, for my expectation is from Him. Psalm 62. This is a very important statement. The soul is the subconscious mind, and the psalmist was telling his subconscious to expect everything directly from the universal, not to depend on doors, channels, or expectations. You can expect seemingly impossible good from God if you do not limit the channels, do not say how it must be done or how it cannot be done. God is the giver and the gift, and He creates His own amazing channels. Take the following statement. I cannot be separated from God, the giver, so I cannot be separated from God, the gift. The gift is God in action. Understand that every blessing is good in action, and see God in every face and good in every situation. This makes you master of all conditions. A woman came to me saying there was no heat in the radiators of her apartment, and her mother was suffering from the cold. She added that the landlord had said they couldn't have heat until a certain date. I replied, "God is your landlord." She said, "That's all I need to know," and ran off. That night, the heat came on without any questions. This was because she realized that the landlord was God in manifestation. This is a wonderful time because people are becoming miracle-minded. It's in the air. Citing an article I found in the New York Journal and American, the John Anderson, this corroborates what I just said. The title of the article is, "Theatergoers Make Hits of Metaphysical Plays." Yes, said a cynical manager named Brock Pemberton, with a slight sarcastic tinge in his voice. The other night, during an intermission chat on the sidewalk, you, referring to the critics, know so much about what the New York public wants that you won't tell me what to produce. Why don't you invite me into the business instead of pushing me out? Why don't you tell me what type of plays the audiences want to see? I would, I said, but you wouldn't believe me. You don't know, and you're trying to disguise it by pretending to know more than you are willing to say. You have no more idea than I have right now about what type of plays tend to succeed. Yes, I do, I said. There is a surefire success, a theme that works and has always worked, whether it competes with boy-meets-girl stories, mysteries, historical tragedies, etc. No play on this theme has ever completely failed if it had some merit, and many poor ones have been great successes. You amuse me, said Mr. Pemberton. What type of plays are metaphysical? I said, lightly tossing in a big word and quietly waiting for the effect. Metaphysical, said Mr. Pemberton. You mean metaphysical? I paused, and as Mr. Pemberton said nothing, I continued, dropping titles like Green Pastures, Outward Bound, The Miracle of Father Malachias, etc. Some of them, I added, reached the audience above the critics. But Mr. Pemberton had gone off, probably to ask in every theatre in town, is there a metaphysician in the house? People are beginning to understand the power of their words and thoughts. They understand why faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. We see the law of expectation at work through superstition. If you walk under a ladder expecting bad luck, it will bring you bad luck. The ladder is quite innocent. The bad luck came because you expected it. We could say, expectation is the substance of things hoped for, or expectation is the substance of the thing a man fears. The thing I greatly feared has come upon me. Nothing is too good to be true, nothing is too wonderful to happen, nothing is too good to last. When you look to God for your good now, think of blessings that seem so far away and begin to expect them now, under grace, in unexpected ways, for God works in unexpected ways, His wonders to perform. I have been told there are 3,000 promises in the Bible. Let's hope now that they all come true, among them riches and honors, eternal youth, your flesh shall be as a little child's, and eternal life, even death shall be overcome. Christianity was founded on the forgiveness of sins and an empty tomb. Now we know that all these things are scientifically possible. By invoking the law of forgiveness, we free ourselves from mistakes and their consequences. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as wool. Then our bodies will be bathed in light and express the electric body that is incorruptible and indestructible, a pure substance expressing perfection. I expect the unexpected, my glorious good now comes to pass through the long arm of God. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. In the Bible, the arm of God always symbolizes protection. The writers of the Bible knew the power of a symbol to impress the subconscious mind. They used symbols like the rock, the sheep, the shepherds, the vine, the lamp, and hundreds of others. It would be interesting to know how many symbols are used in the Bible. The arm also symbolizes strength. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. He will drive out the enemy before you and will say, "Destroy them." Who is the enemy before you? These are the negative thought forms you have built up in your subconscious mind. Man's enemies are only those of his own household. The everlasting arms drive out these enemy thoughts and destroy them. Have you ever felt the relief of dispelling a negative thought form? Perhaps you have harbored a form of resentment until it consistently manifested as anger towards something. You feel resentment towards people you know, towards people you don't know, towards people from the past and present, and you can be sure that future people will not escape your anger. All the organs of the body are affected by resentment. When you feel resentment, you do so with all the organs of your body. You pay the price with rheumatism, arthritis, neuritis, etc., because acidic thoughts produce acid in the blood. This whole problem arises because you are fighting the battle, not leaving it to the long arm of God. I have given the following statement to many of my students. The long arm of God reaches out over people and conditions, controlling the situation and protecting my interests. This brings an image of a long arm symbolizing strength and protection. By understanding the power of God's long arm, you will no longer resist or feel resentment. You will relax and let go. The enemy thoughts within you will be destroyed. Consequently, adverse conditions will disappear. Spiritual development means the ability to remain calm or to step aside and let infinite intelligence lift your burdens and fight your battles. When the burden of resentment is lifted, you feel relief. You have a benevolent feeling towards everyone, and all the organs of your body begin to function correctly. An article I found quoting Albert Eddy says that loving our enemies is good for our spiritual health, which is widely known and accepted, but negativity and toxic emotions destroy physical health. This is a relatively recent discovery. Health problems are often emotional problems. Wrong emotions, maintained and repeated, are powerful causes of disease. When the preacher talks about loving your enemies, the average person is inclined to dismiss the idea as untenable and pious. But the fact is, the preacher is telling him something that is one of the primary laws of hygiene as well as ethics. No man, even for the sake of his body, can afford to indulge in hatred. It is like a repeated dose of poison. When you are encouraged to rid yourself of fear, you are not listening to a moonstruck idealist, but rather to advice that is as important for health as advice on diet. Much is said about a balanced diet, but without a balanced mind, one cannot digest what one eats, whether with or without calories. Non-resistance is an art. When mastered, the world is yours. Many people try to force situations. Your lasting good will never come through the force of personal will. Flee from the things that flee from you. Do not seek anything, fortune seeks you. Behold its shadow on the ground, behold its shadow on the door. I do not know the author of these lines. It is Black, the famous English athlete. He was asked how he achieved his speed and endurance in running. He replied, "Learn to relax. Let's achieve this rest in action." He was more relaxed when he ran faster. Great opportunity and great success often come when least expected. You must relax enough for the great law of attraction to operate. You have never seen a worried and anxious magnet. It stands upright and has no concern in the world, for it knows the needles cannot help but leap towards it. The things we desire become realities when we have released the clutch. In my correspondence course I say, do not let the desire of your heart become a heart disease. You completely demagnetize yourself when you desire something too intensely. You worry, you fear, and you agonize. There is a hidden law of indifference. None of these things move me. Your ships come in on a sea of carefreeness. Many people of the truth get angry with their friends because they are too anxious for them to read the books and attend the lectures. They meet opposition. A friend brought my book, The Game of Life and How to Play It, to her brother to read. The young people in the family refused to read it. None of that nonsense for them. One of these young people drives a taxi, and one night he was driving a taxi that belonged to another man. While checking the car, he found a book hidden somewhere. It was The Game of Life and How to Play It. The next day he said to his aunt, "Last night I found the lady's book in the taxi. I read it, and it's great. There's a lot of good reading in it. Why not write another book?" God works in mysterious ways, His wonders to perform. I meet unhappy people and grateful happy people. A man once told me, "I have much to be thankful for. I have health, enough money, and I'm still single." Psalm 89 is very interesting because we find two individuals there. The man who sings the psalm, for all psalms are songs or poems, and the Lord God of hosts who responds to him. It is a song of praise and thanksgiving that exalts the mighty arm of God. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. With my mouth will I make known your faithfulness to all generations. For I have said, mercy shall be built up forever. Your faithfulness you shall establish in the very heavens. I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn to David my servant, your seed I will establish forever, and build up your throne to all generations. The words forever are heard only in the Bible and fairy tales. In the absolute, man is out of time and space. His goods are forever and ever. Fairy tales come from ancient Persian legends, which are based on truth. Aladdin and his wonderful lamp are a representation of the word. Aladdin rubbed the lamp, and all his wishes came true. Your word is your lamp. Words and thoughts are a form of radial activity and do not return void. A scientist once said that words are continually clothed with light. You constantly reap the fruits of your words. A friend, during one of my meetings, said she had brought a man to my class who had been unemployed for over a year. I made the statement, "Now is the appointed time. Today is the day of my amazing luck." This clicked in his consciousness. Shortly after, he was offered a job that paid him $9,000 a year. A woman told me that when I blessed the offering, I said every offering would return 1,000-fold. She had put $1 in the collection. She said with great understanding that this dollar is blessed and will bring back $1,000. She received those $1,000 shortly thereafter, in the most unexpected way. Some people demonstrate this truth much more quickly than others because they have ears to hear. Jesus Christ tells the parable of the man who sowed the seed, and it fell on good ground. The seed is the word. I say, listen to the affirmation that resonates, the affirmation that makes you understand. This affirmation will bear fruit. The other day I entered a store where I knew the owner quite well. I had given one of his employees an affirmation card. I jokingly told him he wouldn't waste an affirmation card. He wouldn't use it. He replied, "Oh, sure, give me one and I'll use it." The following week I gave him a card before leaving. He came to me all excited and said, "I made this affirmation and 2 new customers walked in. It was now the appointed time. Today is the day of my amazing luck." This clicked. Many people use their words in exaggerated and bold statements. I find a lot of material for my speeches at the beauty salon. A young woman wanted a magazine to read. She called the operator and said, "Give me something terribly new and terribly exciting." All she wanted was the latest movie magazine. You hear people say, "I wish something terribly exciting would happen." They invite an unhappy but exciting experience into their lives, then wonder why it happened to them. There should be a chair of metaphysics in every university. Metaphysics is the wisdom of ancient times. It is the ancient wisdom taught over centuries in India, Egypt, and Greece. Hermes Trismegistus was a great master of Egypt. His teachings were well guarded and have come down to us through 10 centuries. He lived in Egypt at a time when the current race of men was in its infancy. But if one reads carefully the Kybalion, we find he taught exactly what we teach today. He said that all mental states were accompanied by vibrations. We attract what vibrates with us. So let us all vibrate towards success, happiness, and abundance. Now is the appointed time. Today is the day of my amazing luck. The fork in the road. Choose whom you will serve. Every day there is a need for choice, a fork in the road. I will do this or that. I will go or stay. Many people do not know what to do. They rush to let others make decisions for them and later regret following their advice. There are others who reason carefully. They weigh and measure the situation often as if it were a purchase and are surprised when they do not achieve their goal. There are others who follow the magical path of intuition and find themselves in their promised land in the blink of an eye. Intuition is a spiritual faculty that is far above the rational mind. But on this path lies everything one desires or requires. In my book, The Game of Life and How to Play It, I give many examples of successes achieved using this wonderful faculty. I also say that prayer is calling God, and intuition is when God calls you. Correspondence course. So, by choosing and taking the magical path of intuition in my questions and answers course, I tell you, cultivating intuition in most people is a faculty that has remained dormant, which is why we say, wake up, you who sleep. Awaken to your clues and hunches, awaken to inner divinity. Claude said that living intuitively is living in the fourth dimension. Now it is necessary for you to make a decision. You are faced with a fork in the road. Ask for a definitive and unequivocal clue, and you will receive it. We find many events to interpret metaphysically in the book of Joshua. After the death of Moses, the divine order came to Joshua. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I give to them. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you. Feet are the symbol of understanding, which metaphysically means that everything we understand is beneath us in consciousness, and what is rooted there can never be taken from us. Because the Bible continues by saying, no one shall be able to stand against you all the days of your life. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and of good courage, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. So, we find that we succeed by being strong and very courageous in following the spiritual law. We return to the fork in the road, to the need for choice. Choose today whom you will serve, intellect or divine guidance. A well-known man who became a great power in the financial world said to a friend, I am always guided by intuition, and I am incarnate luck. Inspiration, which is divine guidance, is the most important thing in life. People come to truth meetings seeking inspiration. The right word will start divine activity working in their affairs. A woman came to me with a business complication. I told her, let God handle the situation. She clicked on the affirmation, now I leave God to juggle with this situation. Almost immediately she rented a house that had been vacant for a long time. Let God juggle with each situation, because when you try to juggle with the situation, all the balls drop. In my Q&A sessions I was asked, how do you let God juggle with a situation, and what does it mean when it says I should not juggle? We juggle with the intellect. The intellect would say, these are tough times. There's no activity in the real estate sector. Don't expect anything until fall 1958. With spiritual law there is only now. Before you call, I will answer you, because time and space are but a dream, and your blessing is there, waiting for you to release it through faith and word. Choose today whom you will serve, fear or faith. In every act motivated by fear lies the seed of its own defeat. It takes much strength and courage to trust in God. Often we trust Him for small things, but when it comes to a significant situation, we feel it's better to handle it ourselves. Then comes defeat and failure. The following excerpt from a letter I received from a woman in the West shows how conditions can change in the blink of an eye. I had the pleasure of reading your wonderful book, The Game of Life and How to Play It. I have 4 sons aged 10, 13, 15 and 17, and I thought how wonderful it is for them to understand it from a young age and be able to get what is rightfully theirs by divine right. The lady who allowed me to read her copy gave me other things to read, but I found that when I took this book it was magnetic, and I couldn't put it down after reading it. I realized that I was trying to live divinely, but did not understand the law. Otherwise, I would have progressed much more. At first, I thought it was very difficult to find a place in the business world after so many years as a mother, but I received this affirmation. God creates a way where there is none. And that's what He did for me. I'm grateful for my position, and I smile when people ask me how I manage 4 growing children and a household after all the times I was hospitalized for such major operations and without any of my loved ones near me. I have this phrase in my book, God creates a way where there is none. God opened a way for her in business when all her friends said it couldn't be done. The average person will tell you that almost everything cannot be done. The other day I had an example of this in a store. I found a small and charming silver pourer that made just 1 cup of anything. I showed it to friends enthusiastically, thinking it was very pretty, and one of them said, "That will never work." And the other said, "If it were mine, I would throw it away." I defended the little device and said I knew it would work. And that's what happened. My friends were just the ones who say it cannot be done. All great ideas meet opposition. Do not let others capsize your boat. Follow the path of wisdom and understanding, and do not turn to the right or to the left to prosper wherever you go. In verse 13 of Joshua chapter 24, we read this remarkable statement. I gave you a land on which you had not labored, and cities that you had not built, and you dwell in them. You eat the vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant. This shows that man cannot earn anything. His blessings come as gifts so that no one may boast of achieving wealth. We receive the gift of wealth with the realization of success. For success and abundance are states of mind. For the Lord our God brought us out, we and our fathers, from the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. The land of Egypt represents darkness, the house of bondage, where man is a slave to his doubts and fears and believes in scarcity and limitation, a result of following the wrong fork in the road. Misfortune comes from not sticking to things revealed by the Spirit through intuition. All great things have been accomplished by men who clung to their great ideas. Henry Ford was already past middle age when he had the idea for the car. Ford had a lot of trouble getting money. His friends thought it was a crazy idea. His father said to him with tears in his eyes, "Henry, why leave a good job at $25 a week to pursue a crazy idea?" But no one could capsize Ford's boat. To get out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, we must make the right decisions, follow the right fork in the road. Only be strong and very courageous, so that you observe and do all that the law of Moses, my servant, has commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. Therefore, arriving today at the fork in the road, fearlessly follow the voice of intuition, which the Bible calls the still small voice. A voice came behind me saying, "Here is the way, walk in it. In this path is the good already prepared for you. You will find the land that you have not plowed and cities that you have not built, and you will dwell there. You will eat from vineyards and olive groves that you have not planted. I am divinely guided. I am on the right fork in the road." God creates a path where there is none. Crossing the Red Sea, He speaks to the children of Israel to move forward. Exodus 14:15. One of the most dramatic stories in the Bible is the episode of the children of Israel crossing the Red Sea. Moses led them out of the land of Egypt, where they were held as slaves, pursued by the Egyptians. The children of Israel, like most people, were not comfortable trusting God. They murmured a lot. They said to Moses, "Is this not the word that we told you in Egypt, saying, 'Let us serve the Egyptians'? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." And Moses said to the people, "Do not fear, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which He will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall see them again no more forever. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace." We could say that Moses tested the faith of the children of Israel. They preferred to be slaves to their old fears and doubts, as Egypt represents darkness. They had to take the leap of faith and cross the desert to reach their promised land. Indeed, there is a desert to cross before reaching the promised land. Old fears and doubts camp around you. But there is always someone telling you to keep going. There is always a Moses on your path. Sometimes it's a friend, sometimes it's intuition. The Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry to me? Speak to the children of Israel, that they go forward. Lift up your rod, and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, and the waters were a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them and went after them into the sea, with all of Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen." And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it. And the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, and all the army of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. Now remember, the Bible speaks of the individual. It speaks of their desert, their Red Sea, and their promised land. Each of you has a promised land, the desire of your heart, but you have been so enslaved by the Egyptians, your negative thoughts, that it seems very distant and too good to be true. You consider trusting God a very risky proposition. The desert could be worse than the Egyptians. And how do you know the promised land really exists? The reasoning mind will always support the Egyptians, but sooner or later something says to move forward. It is usually the circumstances that push you there. I take the example of a student, a wonderful pianist who had great success abroad. She returned with a book full of newspaper clippings and a joyful heart. A relative took an interest in her and said he would financially support her for a concert tour. They chose a manager who handled expenses and bookings. After 1 or 2 concerts, there was no more funding. The manager had taken it. My friend was distraught, sorry, and disappointed. That's when she came to see me. She hated this man, and it made her sick. She had very little money and could only afford a sad room where her hands were often too cold to practice. Indeed, she was a slave to the Egyptians. Hatred, resentment, lack, and limitation. Someone brought her to one of my meetings, and she spoke to me, telling her story. I said to her, "First, you must stop hating this man. When you can forgive him, your success will return to you." She began to learn forgiveness. It seemed like a huge task, but she tried and came regularly to all my meetings. Meanwhile, the relative had filed a lawsuit to recover the money. Time passed, and the case was never brought to court. My friend received a call to go to California. She was no longer bothered by the situation and had forgiven the man. Suddenly, after about 4 years, she was notified that the case was in court. She called me as soon as she arrived in New York and asked me to speak of righteousness and justice. They arrived at the agreed time and everything was settled amicably, the man returning the money in monthly payments. She came to see me, overflowing with joy, because, as she said, she no longer harbored any resentment toward the man. She was surprised when I warmly welcomed her. Her relative told her that all the money would be hers, which earned her a big bank account. She will soon reach her promised land. She left the house of slavery, of hatred and resentment, and crossed her Red Sea. Her goodwill towards the man caused the waters to part, and she walked through on dry land. Dry land symbolizes something substantial under her feet. Feet symbolize understanding. Moses is one of the most important figures in biblical history. Moses was called the meekest of men. We have often heard the expression, "as meek as Moses." He was so gentle before the Lord's commandments that he became one of the strongest men. The Lord said to Moses, "Lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea." Then, without hesitation, he told the children of Israel to move forward. It was a bold act, leading a crowd of people to the sea with perfect faith in their non-drowning. Here is the miracle. The Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all night long, and he made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. Now remember, this could happen to you too, on this very day. Think about your problem. Perhaps you've lost your initiative after being a slave to Pharaoh for so long, with your doubts, fears, and discouragements. Tell yourself, move forward. The Lord caused the sea to go back with a strong east wind. Think of this strong east wind as a strong affirmation. Take a vital affirmation of truth. For example, If your problem is financial, say, "My supply comes from God, and great and happy financial surprises come to me now under perfect grace." This statement is good because it contains the element of mystery. We are told that God works in mysterious ways, performing his wonders to fulfill them, even in surprising ways. Now that you have made your declaration for supply, you have sent forth the east wind. So move toward your Red Sea of lack or limitation. The way to reach the Red Sea is to do something that demonstrates your courage. Let me tell you the story of a student who received an invitation to visit friends at a very elegant vacation center. She had been living in the countryside for a long time, had gained weight, and possessed nothing but her scout uniform. Suddenly she received the invitation, which meant evening clothes, slippers, and accessories she did not have and couldn't afford to buy. She came to see me, and I asked her what her intuition was. She replied, "I feel very bold. I have the intuition to go anyway." So she embarked on a journey and went. When she arrived at her friend's place, she was warmly welcomed, but her hostess said to her with some embarrassment, "Maybe what I did will bother you, but there are evening gowns and slippers that I never use and have put in your room. Would you like to use them?" My friend assured her that she would be delighted, and everything went perfectly well. Indeed, she had reached her Red Sea and had crossed over on dry land. The waters of my Red Sea parted, and I crossed on dry land. Now I am advancing toward my promised land. The gatekeeper also placed sentinels over you, saying, "Listen to the sound of the trumpet." Jeremiah 6:17. We all must have a gatekeeper at the door of our thoughts. The gatekeeper at the door is the superconscious mind. We have the power to choose our thoughts. As we have lived in the race of thoughts for thousands of years, it seems almost impossible to control them. They rush into our minds like a herd or a stampede of sheep. But just one sheepdog can control the frightened sheep and lead them to the sheepfold. I saw a news photo of a sheepdog controlling the sheep. He had gathered all but 3. These 3 resisted and expressed their displeasure by bleating and lifting their front legs in protest. But the dog just sat down in front of them, never taking his eyes off them, not barking at them or threatening them. He just sat and watched with determination. After a while, the sheep lowered their heads and entered the sheepfold. We can learn to control our thoughts in the same way, with gentle determination, not force. We take an affirmation and repeat it continuously while our thoughts are restless. We may not always control our thoughts, but we can control our words, and repetition impresses the subconscious. Thus, we are masters of the situation. In the 6th chapter of Jeremiah, we read, "I have set a watchman over you, saying, 'Listen to the sound of the trumpet.'" Your success and happiness in life depend on the gatekeeper at the door of your thoughts, because your thoughts crystallize sooner or later in the exterior. People think that fleeing a negative situation will free them from it, but the same situation confronts them wherever they go. They will encounter the same experiences until they have learned the lesson. This idea is illustrated in the movie The Wizard of Oz. Little Dorothy is very unhappy because the wicked woman of the village wants to take away her dog, Toto. She goes desperately to Aunt Em and Uncle Henry's, but they are too busy to listen to her and tell her to go away. She tells Toto that there is a wonderful place up there in the sky where everyone is happy and no one is mean, as she would like to be there. A Kansas cyclone suddenly appears, and she and Toto are carried high into the sky and land in the land of Oz. At first, everything seems charming, but soon she has the same experiences as before. The old wicked woman of the village has become a terrible witch and continues to try to take Toto away from her. How she would like to return to Kansas. She is told to seek the Wizard of Oz. He is all-powerful and will grant her wish. She sets out to find his palace in the Emerald Cities, and on the way she meets a scarecrow who is very unhappy because he has no brain. She meets a tin man who is very unhappy because he has no heart. Then she meets a lion who is very unhappy because he has no courage. She encourages them by saying that we will all go see the Wizard of Oz, and he will give us what we want. The scarecrow a brain, the tin man a heart, and the lion courage. They encounter terrible experiences because the wicked witch is determined to capture Dorothy and take Toto as well as the ruby slippers that protect her. Finally, they arrive at the Emerald Palace of the Wizard of Oz, request an audience, but are told that no one has ever seen the Wizard of Oz, who mysteriously resides in the palace. But under the influence of the kind witch of the north, they enter the palace and discover that the wizard is only an imposter from Dorothy's hometown in Kansas. Everyone is desperate because their wishes cannot be fulfilled. But then the kind witch shows them that their wishes have already been granted. The Scarecrow has developed a brain by making decisions in the face of the experiences he encountered. The Tin Man discovers he has a heart because he loves Dorothy. And the Lion has become courageous because he had to show courage in his many adventures. The kind witch of the north tells Dorothy that she has learned from her experiences, and Dorothy replies, "I have learned that the desire of my heart is in my own home and in my own backyard." Then the kind witch waves her magic wand, and Dorothy is back home. She wakes up and finds that the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion are the men who work on her uncle's farm. They are very happy to have her back. This story teaches that if you run away from your problems, they will pursue you. Do not worry about a situation and it will fall away by itself. There is a hidden law of indifference. None of these things touch me. None of these things disturb me, we might say in modern language. When you can no longer be disturbed, all disturbance will disappear from the outside. When your eyes have seen your masters disappear. I have set sentinels over you, saying, "Listen to the sound of the trumpet." A trumpet is a musical instrument used in ancient times to draw people's attention to something, to victory, to order. You will form the habit of paying attention to every thought and every word when you understand their importance. Imagination, the scissors of the mind, constantly cuts out the events that will come into your life. Many people cut out images of fear by seeing things that are not divinely planned. With the single eye, man sees only the truth, sees through evil, knowing that. Good comes out of it. He transmutes injustice into justice and disarms his apparent enemy by sending him good. We read in mythology about the Cyclopes, a race of giants who lived in Sicily. These giants had a single eye in the middle of their forehead. The seat of the faculty of imagination is located on the forehead, between the eyes. Therefore, these legendary giants emerged from this idea. You are truly a giant when you have a single eye. So every thought will be a constructive thought and every word a word of power. Let the third eye be the gatekeeper. Therefore, if your eye is single, your whole body is filled with light. With the single eye, your body will be transformed into your spiritual body, the electric body made in the image of God. By clearly visualizing the perfect plan, we could redeem the world with our inner eye, see a world of peace, abundance, and goodwill. Do not judge by appearances, judge with justice. The nation will not lift up sword against nation, neither will they learn war anymore. The hidden law of indifference means that adverse appearances do not bother you. You firmly grasp the constructive thought that triumphs. The spiritual law transcends the law of karma. This is the mental attitude that the healer or practitioner must maintain toward his patient, indifferent to the appearances of lack, loss, or disease. It produces change in mind, body, and affairs. Let me quote chapter 31 of Jeremiah. The keynote is joy. This gives an image of the individual liberated from negative thinking. For there will come a day when the sentinels of Mount Ephraim will cry out, "Arise, let us go up to Zion, to the Lord our God." The gatekeeper does not sleep or slumber. It is the eye that watches over Israel. But the individual who lives in a world of negative thinking is not aware of this inner eye. He may occasionally have flashes of intuition or enlightenment, then falls back into a world of chaos. It takes determination and eternal vigilance to control words and thoughts. Thoughts of fear, failure, resentment, and ill will must be dissolved and dissipated. Let us take the affirmation. Every plant which my Heavenly Father has not planted will be rooted up. This gives a vivid image of pulling out weeds in a garden. They are cast aside and wither away because they have no soil to sustain them. You feed negative thoughts by giving them your attention. Use the hidden law of indifference and refuse to be interested in them. Soon you will starve the army of negative thoughts. Divine ideas will flow into your consciousness. False ideas will fade away, and you will desire only what God desires through you. The Chinese have a proverb: "The philosopher leaves the hem of his robe to the tailor." So leave the plan of your life to the divine designer, and you will find all conditions perfectly in place permanently. The ground on which I stand is sacred ground. Now, I expand rapidly into the divine plan of my life, where all conditions are perfectly permanent. The path of abundance is the path of the one way. As the old saying goes, there are not two ways. Either you are heading toward scarcity, or you are heading toward abundance. The man with a rich consciousness and the man with a poor consciousness do not walk in the same mental path. There is an abundantly supplied divine provision for every individual. The wealthy man enjoys it because rich thoughts produce a rich environment. Change your thoughts, and in the twinkling of an eye, all your conditions will change. Your world is a world of crystallized ideas, crystallized words. Sooner or later you reap the fruits of your words and thoughts. Words are bodies or forces that move in spirals and return in their due season to traverse the life of their creators. People who always speak of scarcity and limitation reap scarcity and limitation. You cannot enter the realm of abundance if you lament your fate. I know a woman who has always been limited in her ideas of prosperity. She constantly made her old clothes serve instead of buying new ones. She was very cautious with her money and always advised her husband not to spend so much. She continually said, "I don't want anything I can't afford." She couldn't afford much, so she didn't have much. Suddenly, her whole world collapsed. Her husband left her, tired of her complaints and limited thoughts. She was desperate. One day, she came across a metaphysical book explaining the power of thought and words. She realized she had attracted all these unhappy experiences through wrong thinking. She laughed at her mistakes and decided to profit from them. She decided to test the law of abundance. She used her money fearlessly to show her faith in her invisible supply. She trusted God as the source of her prosperity. She no longer expressed lack and limitation, feeling and looking prosperous. Her old friends barely recognized her. She had entered the path of abundance, receiving more money than she had ever had. Unheard of doors opened and amazing channels freed themselves. She succeeded greatly in a job for which she had not been trained. She found herself on miraculous ground. All this had happened because she had changed the quality of her words and thoughts, had taken God into her trust, and in all her affairs she had many last-minute demonstrations. But her supply always arrived because she dug her trenches and gave thanks without hesitation. Recently, someone called me and said, "I am desperately seeking employment." I replied, "Don't seek it desperately. Seek it with praise and thanksgiving. For Jesus Christ, the greatest of metaphysicians, said to pray with praise and thanksgiving. Praise and thanksgiving open doors, for expectation always wins." Of course, the law is impersonal, and a dishonest person with rich thoughts will attract wealth. But a bad life always has bad success, as Shakespeare said. This success will be short-lived and will not bring happiness. Just read the newspapers to see how hard the transgressor's path is. That is why it is so necessary to correctly formulate your demands to the universal supply, and ask for what is rightfully yours under divine law and perfectly under grace. Some people attract prosperity but cannot hold on to it. Sometimes they squander it because of fear and worry. A friend in one of my Q&A classes told this story about people from her hometown who had always been poor. Suddenly, they discovered oil in their backyard. This brought them great wealth. The father joined the country club and started playing golf. He was no longer young and the exercise was too much for him. He died on the course. This filled the whole family with fear. They all decided he might have had heart trouble. Now they are all bedridden with trained nurses watching every heartbeat. In the race, people must worry about something. They no longer cared about money, so they shifted their concerns to health. The old idea was that you couldn't have everything. If you got one thing, you lost another. People always said, "Your luck won't last. It's too good to be true." Jesus Christ said, "In the world you will have tribulation, but take courage. I have overcome the world." In the superconscious or inner Christ, there is an abundantly supplied provision for every demand, and your good is perfect and permanent. If you return to the Almighty in consciousness, you will be built up, turning iniquity far from your tents. Then you will accumulate gold like dust and Ophir gold like the pebbles of the rivers. Yes, the Almighty will be your defense, and you will have abundant silver. What an image of opulence, the result of returning to the Almighty in consciousness. For the average person who has long thought in terms of lack, building a rich consciousness is very difficult. I have a student who attracted great success by declaring, "I am the daughter of the king, my rich father now pours his abundance upon me. I am the daughter of the king, everything opens before me." Many people endure limited conditions because they are mentally too lazy to envision breaking free from them. You must have a strong desire for financial freedom. You must feel rich, see yourself as rich, and continually prepare for wealth. Act as a child and believe in yourself that you are wealthy. Thus, you will impress your subconscious with expectation. Imagination is the workshop of man, the scissors of the mind, where he constantly cuts out the events of his life. The superconscious is the realm of inspiration, revelation, illumination, and intuition. Intuition is often known as a premonition. I no longer apologize for the word premonition. It is now in the latest Webster's dictionary. I had a premonition to look up premonition, and there it was. The superconscious is the realm of perfect ideas. The great genius captures his thoughts from the superconscious. Without vision, imagination, my people perish. When people have lost the power to imagine, their good will perish or sink. It is interesting to compare the translation of the French and English Bibles in verse 21 of Job, chapter 22. In the French Bible we read, "Hold fast to God, and you will have peace. Thus you will have happiness." In verse 23, "If you turn to the Almighty, you will be restored. You will remove iniquity from your dwellings." In the English translation we read, "Then you will lay up gold like dust, and the gold of Ophir like the stones of the rivers." In the French Bible we read, "Throw gold into the dust, Ophir gold among the stones of torrents, and the Almighty will be your gold, your silver, your wealth." This means that if people depend entirely on their visible supply, it is better to throw it away and have absolute trust in the Almighty for gold, silver, and wealth. I give an example from a story a friend told me. A priest visited a convent of nuns in France where they were feeding many children. One of the desperate nuns told the priest they had no food. The children must be hungry. She said they had only one silver coin, worth about a quarter. They needed food and clothing. The priest said, "Give me the coin." She handed it to him and he threw it out the window. "Now," he said, "trust God completely." Before long, friends arrived with plenty of food and money gifts. This does not mean to throw away the money you have, but not to depend on it. Depend on your invisible supply, the bank of imagination. Let us now attach ourselves to God and have peace, for He will be our gold, our silver, and our wealth. The inspiration of the Almighty will be my defense, and I will have plenty of money. I will never lack anything, for the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Psalms 23:1. Psalm 23 is the most famous of all the Psalms. We could say it is the key to the Bible's message, telling man he will lack nothing when he has the understanding or conviction that the Lord is his shepherd, that infinite intelligence provides for all his needs. If you gain this conviction today, all your needs will be met now and forever. You will instantly attract from the spheres abundance of everything you desire or need, for what you need is already on your way. A woman suddenly realized, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." She seemed to touch her invisible supply. She felt outside time and space, no longer dependent on the outside. Her first demonstration was small but necessary. She immediately needed large staples, but had no time to buy them at a stationery store. While looking for something else, she opened a rarely used trunk and found a dozen large staples. She felt the law was working and thanked. Then the necessary money appeared, and big and small things came to her. Since then, she has relied on the affirmation, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Formerly, people used to say, "I don't think it's right to ask God for money or things." They did not realize that this creative principle is in every man, the inner father. True spirituality is testing God as your daily supply, not just occasionally. Jesus Christ knew this law, for whatever he wanted or needed appeared immediately in his path, loaves and fishes, and money from the fish's mouth. With this understanding, all hoarding and saving would vanish. This does not mean you should not have a large bank account and investments, but that you should not depend on them. So if you suffered a loss in one way, you would gain in another. Always your storehouses would be full and your cup would overflow. Now, how do we establish this contact with our invisible supply? By taking a statement of truth that resonates and gives realization. It is not open to a few chosen. Whoever calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. The Lord is your shepherd, my shepherd, and the shepherd of all. God is the supreme intelligence devoted to meeting man's needs. The explanation is that man is God in action. Jesus Christ said, "I and the Father are one." We could paraphrase the affirmation and say, I and the great creative principle of the universe are one and the same. Man fails only when he loses contact with this creative principle on which he must fully rely, for it is pure intelligence and knows the path of fulfillment. The reasoning mind and personal will short-circuit. Trust me, and I will perform. Most people are filled with apprehension and fear when there is nothing to cling to outside. A woman came to see me almost in tears and said, "I am very worried about the business situation." I replied to her, "The situation with God remains the same. The Lord is your shepherd. You shall not want. If one door closes, another opens." A very successful businessman who conducts all his affairs by the methods of truth said, "The problem with most people is that they end up trusting certain conditions. They lack enough imagination to move forward, to open new channels. Almost all great successes are built on failure." I was told that Edgar Bergen lost his role in a Broadway production because they no longer wanted puppets. He then introduced it on Rudy's Radio Hour, and he and Charlie McCarthy became famous overnight. This means that when you want to be dead, your manifestation will occur in 3 days. Don't be fooled by the darkness before dawn. It's good to see the sunrise occasionally to convince yourself of its infallibility. This reminds me of an experience from several years ago. I had a friend who lived in Prockland near PRD Park. She liked doing unusual things and told me, "Come see me and we'll get up early to see the sunrise at Prospect Park." At first I refused, but then I had an intuition that it would be an interesting experience. It was summer. We got up around 4 o'clock, my friend, her little daughter, and I. It was very dark, but we went out onto the street to the park entrance. A few policemen watched us curiously, but my friend told them with dignity, "We are going to see the sunrise," and that satisfied them. We crossed the park to the beautiful rose garden. A faint pink ray appeared in the east, and suddenly we heard a loud noise. We were near the zoo, and all the animals were greeting the dawn. The lions roared, the tigers growled, the hyenas laughed, cries and howls were audible. All the animals had something to say because a new day was approaching. It was truly inspiring. Light filtered through the trees. Everything looked supernatural. Then, as it became brighter, our shadows were in front of us instead of behind us. The sunrise of a new day. It's the wonderful dawn that comes to each of us after a period of darkness. Your rise to success, happiness, and abundance is about to come. Each day is important. Since we read in the wonderful Sanskrit poem, "Look well, for today is the salvation of dawn. Today, the Lord is your shepherd. Today you shall lack nothing, because you and this great creative principle are one and the same." Psalm 34 is also a psalm of security. It begins with a blessing for the Lord. "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth." To those who seek the Lord, nothing will be lacking in goodness. Seeking the Lord means that man must take the first step. "Draw near to me, and I will draw near to you," says the Lord. You seek the Lord by making your affirmation, by waiting, and by preparing for your good. If you ask for success and prepare for failure, you will receive what you have prepared for. I relate in my book, The Game of Life and How to Play It, the story of a man who asked me to say the word that all his debts would be wiped out after treatment. He said, Now I'm thinking about what I'll say to people when I don't have money to pay them. It will not help you if you do not trust him, because faith and expectation impress the subconscious mind with the image of accomplishment. In Psalm 23 we read, "He restores my soul." Your soul is your subconscious mind and must be restored with right ideas. Everything you deeply feel is imprinted in the subconscious and manifests in your affairs. If you are convinced that you are a failure, you will be a failure until you imprint in your subconscious the conviction that you are a winner. This is done by making a statement that clicks. A friend at a meeting said she made the statement as she left the room, "The ground you tread on is harvest ground." Things with her had been very dull, but this statement clicked. Harvest ground, echoed in her ears. Immediately, good things and happy surprises began to happen to her. The reason it is necessary to make a statement is because repetition impresses the subconscious. At first, you cannot control your thoughts, but you can control your words. And Jesus Christ said, "By your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned." Every day, choose the right words, the right thoughts. The faculty of imagination is the creative faculty. Imaginative hearts bring forth the affairs of life. We all have a bank to turn to, the bank of imagination. Let's imagine ourselves rich, healthy, and happy. Let's imagine all our problems in divine order, but leave the way of realization to infinite intelligence. It has means you do not know, it has channels that will surprise you. One of the most important passages of Psalm 23 is, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." This means that even in the presence of enemy situations caused by your doubts, fears, or resentments, a way out is prepared for you. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I will meditate on the works of the Lord. I will certainly remember your past wonders." The words wonder and wonderful are often used in the Bible. In the dictionary, the word wonder is defined as a cause of surprise, amazement, or a miracle. Oswald Wirth, in his book The Bible Explained, calls the world of the fourth dimension the wonderful world. He mathematically calculated that there is a realm where all conditions are perfect. Jesus Christ called it the kingdom. We could say to seek first the world of wonders, and all things will be added unto you. This can only be achieved through a state of consciousness. Jesus Christ said that to enter the kingdom, we must become like little children. Children are constantly in a state of joy and wonderment. The future holds promises of a mysterious good. Anything can happen overnight. Robert Stevenson, in his Child's Garden of Verses, says, "The world is so full of a number of things. I'm sure we should all be as happy as kings. So let's look with wonder at what lies before us." This affirmation was given to me years ago, and I mention it in my book, The Game of Life and How to Play It. I had missed an opportunity and felt I should have been more alert. For my good, the next morning I took up the statement early in the day. I contemplate with wonder what lies before me. At noon, the phone rang and the proposal was presented to me again. This time I understood it well. Indeed, I marveled because I had not expected the opportunity to come again. A friend at one of my meetings said the other day that this statement had given her wonderful results. It fills the consciousness with joyful expectancy. Children are filled with joyful expectancy until they grow up and unhappy experiences take them out of the wonderful world. Let's go back and remember some of the dark ideas that were conveyed to us. At the age of 6, I had a strong sense of responsibility. Instead of contemplating with wonder what lay before me, I looked with fear and suspicion. Now I feel much younger than when I was 6. It is a great privilege for children to live in an age where truth is taught to them from birth. Although true metaphysics is not taught to them, the ethers are filled with joyful expectancy. You can become a Charlie Chaplin or a Friday or a great pianist at the age of 6 and go on concert tours. We are all back in the wonderful world where anything can happen overnight, because when miracles come, they come quickly. So let us be aware of miracles, prepare for miracles, expect miracles, and then we will invite them into our lives. Perhaps you need a financial miracle. There is a supply for every demand through active faith, word, and intuition. We release this invisible provider. I will give an example. One of my students found herself almost without funds. She needed $1,000 and had had a lot of money and beautiful possessions at one time, but all she had left was a fur coat. No furrier would give her much for it. I said she would be sold to the right person for the right price, or the supply would come in some other way. It was necessary for the money to manifest immediately. There was no time to worry or reason. She was out on the street making her statements. It was a stormy day. She said to herself, "I will show active faith in my invisible supply by taking a taxi." It was a very strong feeling. Getting out of the taxi at her destination, a woman was waiting to get in. She was an old friend, a very, very kind friend. It was the first time in her life she had taken a taxi, but her face was serious that day. They talked that afternoon, and my friend talked about the fur coat. "Well," her friend said, "I will give you $1,000 for that." And that afternoon, she had the check. God's ways are ingenious, his methods are sure. A student wrote to me the other day that she was using this statement, "God's ways are ingenious, his methods are sure." A series of unexpected contacts led her to a situation she desired. She marveled at the workings of the law. Our demonstrations often come in a split second. Everything is synchronized with astonishing precision in the divine mind. My student got out of the taxi just as her friend stopped to get in. A second later, she would have called another taxi. Man's part is to be keenly awake to his clues and intuitions, for in the magic pathway of intuition, everything you desire or need is there. In Moulton's Modern Reader's Bible, the Book of Psalms is recognized as the pinnacle of lyric poetry, a musical meditation that finds no higher ground than the devout spirit rising in service to God, overflowing into both active and contemplative life. The Psalms are also human documents, and Psalm 77 is selected because it depicts a desperate man who, while contemplating God's wonders, regains faith and security. "I cried out to God with my voice, to God with my voice, and he heard me in the day of my trouble. I sought the Lord, my soul refused to be comforted. Will the Lord cast off forever? And will he be favorable no more? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his tender mercies?" And I said, "This is my anguish. But I will remember the years of the right hand of the Most High. I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember your wonders of old. I will also meditate on all your work and talk of your deeds. Your way, O God, is in the sanctuary. Who is so great a God as our God? You are the God who does wonders. With your arm you have redeemed your people." It is an image of what the average student of truth goes through when faced with a problem, besieged by thoughts of doubt, fear, and despair. Then an affirmation of truth will spring into his consciousness. God's ways are ingenious, his methods are sure. He will remember other difficulties that were overcome. His confidence in God will return. He will think of what God has done before. He will do it for me and more. Not long ago, I was talking with a friend who said, "It would be very foolish if I did not believe that God can solve my problem. So many times before, wonderful things happened to me. I know they will come back." Thus, the summary of Psalm 77 is what God did before. He does it now for me and more. It is good to say this when thinking of your past success, happiness, or wealth. All loss comes from one's own vain imaginations. Fear of loss has infiltrated his conscience. He has carried burdens and fought battles. He has reasoned instead of sticking to the magic path of intuition, but in the blink of an eye, everything will be restored to him, for as they say in the East, what has been given cannot be diminished. Now, to regain the consciousness of a child, he must fill himself with wonder. But be careful not to live in your past childhood. I know people who can only think of their happy childhood days. They remember what they wore since then. There are no skies as blue or grass as green, so they regret the opportunities of the wonderful now. Here's a new way to say, before they call, I will answer. Your good precedes you. It comes before you. But how do you reach your good? You must have ears that hear and eyes that see, otherwise it will pass you by. Some people never reach their good in life. They will say, "My life has always been miserable. Luck never smiles on me." These are people who have been asleep in front of their opportunities, or who, out of laziness, have not reached their good. A woman told a group of friends that she hadn't eaten in 3 days. They rushed to ask people to give her work, but she refused. She explained that she never got up before noon, that she liked to stay in bed and read magazines. She just wanted people to support her while she read Vogue. So we must be careful not to fall into lazy mindsets. Take the affirmation, "I am wide awake to my good. I never miss a trick." Most people are only half awake to their good. A student told me, if I don't follow my intuitions, I always get myself into complicated situations. I will tell the story of a woman, one of my students, who followed her intuition, which brought her surprising results. She had been asked to visit friends in a nearby town. She had very little money. When she arrived at her destination, she found the house locked. They were gone. She was filled with despair. So she began to pray. She said, "Infinite intelligence, give me a decisive clue. Let me know what to do." The name of a hotel came to mind, and it seemed to stand out in large letters. She had just enough money to return to New York and stay at the hotel. As she was about to enter, an old friend suddenly appeared and warmly greeted her. She hadn't seen her for years. She explained that she lived in the hotel but was going away for several months and added, "Why don't you come and stay in my suite while I'm away?" Her friend gratefully accepted and marveled at the workings of the spiritual law. She had reached her good by following her intuition. All progress comes from desire. Current science goes back to Mark and his theory of tenor westing, affirming that birds do not fly because they have wings, but they have wings because they want to fly, result of the impulse of emotional desire. Think about the irresistible power of thought with a clear vision. Many people are in the fog most of the time, making wrong decisions and taking the wrong path. During the Christmas rush, my maid said to a saleswoman in one of the big stores, "I guess this is your busiest day." She replied, "Or not. The day after Christmas is our busiest day when people return most things." Hundreds of people chose the wrong gifts because they didn't listen to their intuitions. No matter what you do, now ask for advice, time and energy, and often a life of suffering. All suffering comes from violating intuition. Unless intuition builds the house, those who build it work in vain. Get into the habit of foresight, then you will always be on the magic path. Then you will always be on the magic path, and it will happen that, before they call, I will answer, and while they are still speaking, I will listen. By working with the spiritual law, we accomplish what already exists in the universal mind. It's there as an idea, but it crystallizes outside through sincere desire. The idea of a bird was a perfect image in the divine mind. The fish captured the idea and desired to become birds. Your desires bring you wings. We should all make possible something that seems impossible. One of my affirmations is that the unexpected happens. My seemingly impossible good is happening now. Do not magnify obstacles, magnify the Lord, that is, magnify the power of God. The average person will stop at all obstacles and hindrances that are there to prevent his good from happening. You combine with what you notice. So if you give all your attention to obstacles and hindrances, they become more and more serious. Give God all your attention. Keep saying silently before all obstacles, God's ways are ingenious, His methods are sure, God's power is invincible, although invisible. Call me and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things you do not know. In demonstrating our good, we must turn away from adverse appearances. Do not judge by appearances. Find a statement that gives you a sense of security. God's long arm stretches over people and conditions, controlling the situation and protecting my interests. I was asked to speak the word for a man who was going to have a business interview with someone apparently unscrupulous. I used the statement, and righteousness and justice emerged from the situation just as I spoke. We have all heard the proverb, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when desire comes, it is a tree of life." By desiring sincerely without anxiety, we achieve what we desire, and the desire crystallizes outside. I will give you the right desires of your heart. Selfish desires, desires that harm others, always end up harming the sender. Right desire could be called an echo of the infinite. It is already a perfect idea in the divine mind. All inventors catch up with the ideas of the items they invent. As I say in my book, The Game of Life and How to Play It, the phone often sought POW. Two people often discover the same inventions at the same time. They were in phase with the same idea. The most important thing in life is to realize the divine plan. Just as the image of the oak is in the acorn, The divine purpose of your life is in your superconscious mind, and you must develop the perfect pattern in your affairs. Then you will lead a magical life, because in the divine purpose all conditions are perfectly permanent. People defy the divine plan when they are asleep for their own good. Maybe the woman who loved to stay in bed most of the day and read magazines should write for magazines, but her lazy habits have dulled any desire to progress. The fish who desired to have wings were vigilant and lively. They did not spend their days floating in the ocean reading Vogue. And you who sleep, wake up and get up to date with your good. Invoke me, and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things that you do not know. Now I'm getting up to date with my good, because even before they call me, the rivers flowed in the desert. Here I will do a new thing. It will soon sprout. You have no knowledge of it. I will open a path in the desert and rivers in dry places. Isaiah 43:19. In this chapter, 43 of Isaiah, there are many wonderful statements that show the irresistible power of the supreme intelligence that comes to the aid of man in times of trouble. No matter how impossible the situation may seem, infinite intelligence knows the solution. By working with the power of God, man becomes unconditional and absolute. Become aware of this hidden power to which we can appeal at any time. Make your contact with infinite intelligence, the inner God, and any appearance of evil disappears because it comes from man's vain imaginations. In my question and answer class, I am asked how to establish a conscious contract with this invincible power. I answer, by your word, you are justified. The centurion said to Jesus Christ, just say a word, and my servant will be healed. Whoever calls on the name of the Lord will be delivered. Note the word invoke. You invoke the Lord or the law. When you make an affirmation of truth, as I always say, take an affirmation that resonates, that gives you a sense of security. People are enslaved by ideas of lack of love, lack of money, lack of company, lack of health, etc. They are enslaved by ideas of interference and incompleteness. They sleep in the adamic sleep. Adam, the generic man, ate from the tree of illusion and saw two powers, good and evil. Christ's mission was to awaken people to the truth of one power, God. Wake up, you who sleep. If you lack anything good, you are still asleep to your good. How to awaken from the Adam sleep of assumptions. After sleeping deeply in race thought for hundreds of years, Jesus Christ said, when two agree, it shall be done. This is the law of agreement. It's almost impossible to see your good clearly by yourself. This is where the healer, practitioner, or friend is needed. Many successful men say they succeeded because their wives believed in them. I will quote a recent tribute from Walter to his wife. Nothing has given me more satisfaction in life than the faith my wife had in me from the very beginning and through all these years. Chrysler wrote about her, it seemed to me that no one could understand an ambitious person except her. I could tell her anything and she understood. It even seemed to me that I could tell her that I intended to become a mechanic one day, and she always supported my ambitions. Speak of your business as little as possible, and only with those who give you courage and inspiration. The world is filled with pessimistic people who tell you that you cannot succeed, that you are aiming too high. When people are sitting at meetings and truth services, often a word or idea will open a way in the desert. Of course, the Bible speaks of states of consciousness. You are in a desert when you are out of harmony, angry, resentful, afraid, or indecisive. Indecision is the cause of many health problems. One day, while on a bus, a woman stopped the conductor and asked him her destination. He told her, but she was indecisive, getting on and off several times. The conductor spoke to her and said, "Madam, make up your mind." It's the same for so many people, ladies. Make up your mind. The intuitive person is never indecisive. She receives her directions and hunches and moves forward with courage, knowing she is on the magic path. In truth, we always ask for definitive indications of what to do, and you will always receive one if you ask. Sometimes it comes in the form of intuition, sometimes from outside. One of my students, named Ada, was walking down the street, unsure whether to go to a particular place. She asked for a sign. 2 women were walking ahead of her. One addressed the other and said, "Why don't you go there, Ada?" The woman's name was Ada. My friend took it as a definite sign and continued on her way, and the result was very successful. We truly lead magical lives, guided and provided for every step, if we have ears to hear and eyes to see. Of course, we have left the intellectual plane and are drawing from the superconscious, the inner God, who says, "This is the way, walk ye in it." Everything you need to know will be revealed to you. Everything lacking will be provided. Thus saith the Lord, who makes a way in the sea and a path in the mighty waters. Do not remember the former things, nor consider the things of old. People who live in the past have cut off their contact with the wonderful now. God knows only the now. It is the appointed time. Today is the day. Many people lead lives of limitation, accumulating and saving, using what they have, which brings more lack and limitation. I give the example of a woman who lived in a small town in the countryside, barely able to see to get around and with very little money. A caring friend took her to an optometrist and provided glasses that allowed her to see perfectly. Some time later, she met her on the street without the glasses. She exclaimed, "Where are your glasses?" The woman replied, "Well, you wouldn't expect me to break them by wearing them every day, would you? I only wear them on Sundays. You must live in the now and be wide awake to your opportunities. Behold, I will do a new thing. It shall soon come to pass, you shall not know beforehand. I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert places." This message is addressed to the individual. Think of your problem and know that infinite intelligence knows the way to realization. I say the way because before you call, it answers. The offer always precedes the demand. God is the giver and the gift, and now He creates His own amazing channels. When you have asked for the manifestation of the divine plan of your life, you are protected from receiving things that are not in the divine plan. You may think that all your happiness depends on getting a particular thing in life, but later you will praise the Lord for not getting it. Sometimes you are tempted to follow rational mind and challenge your intuitive guidance. Suddenly, the hand of destiny pushes you to your rightful place. Under grace, you are once again on the magic path. Now, you are fully awake to your good. You have ears that listen to your intuitions and eyes that see the open road to realization. The genius within me is liberated. Now I fulfill my destiny. The inner meaning of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs asked me to make a metaphysical interpretation of this tale. It's incredible how this fairy tale, a fairy tale, has conquered New York and the whole country thanks to the genius of Walt Disney. This fairy tale was intended for children, but men and women filled the theater. Fairy tales come from ancient legends of Persia, India, and Egypt, which are based on truth. Snow White, the little princess, has a cruel stepmother who is jealous of her. This idea of the cruel stepmother also appears in Cinderella. Almost everyone has a cruel stepmother. The cruel stepmother is a form of negative thinking that has accumulated in the subconscious. Snow White's cruel stepmother is jealous of her and always keeps her in rags and withdrawn. All forms of cruel thoughts do this. The cruel stepmother consults her magic mirror every day asking, "Magic mirror, who is the fairest of them all?" One day the mirror answers, "You, O Queen, are fair and graceful, but Snow White is even fairer than you." This angers the Queen, so she decides to send Snow White into the forest to kill her, but the servant tasked with this job melts into tears when Snow White pleads for her life, so he leaves her in the forest. The forest is full of frightening animals and many dangers. She falls terrified to the ground, and while she is there, a very unusual sight occurs. Dozens of the most charming little animals and birds creep up and surround her: rabbits, squirrels, deer, beavers, raccoons, etc. She opens her eyes and warmly greets them. They are so kind and appealing. She tells them her story, and they lead her to a small house that she transforms into her home. Now these friendly birds and animals symbolize our intuitions or hunches that are always ready to help us in need. The small house turns out to be the home of the 7 Dwarfs. Everything is in disarray, so Snow White and her animal friends begin to clean the house. Squirrels sweep the dust with their tails, Birds hang things using the little servant's antlers as a coat rack. When the 7 dwarfs return home after their day's work in the gold mine, they discover the change and eventually find Snow White asleep in one of the beds. She tells them her story in the morning, and she stays with them to care for the house and cook their meals. She is very happy. The 7 dwarfs symbolize the protective forces that surround us. Meanwhile, the cruel stepmother consults her mirror, which tells her that on the hills, in the shade of the green forest where the 7 dwarfs have established their residence, Snow White is hiding, and she is far fairer than you. This angers the queen, so she leaves disguised as an old witch with a poisoned apple for Snow White. She finds her in the house of the 7 dwarfs and tempts her with the large, delicious red apple. The birds and animals try to tell her not to touch it, trying to give her the intuition not to eat it. They rush to try to dissuade her, but Snow White cannot resist the apple. She takes a bite and seemingly falls dead. Now all the little birds and animals rush to bring the 7 dwarfs to her rescue, but it's too late. Snow White lies lifeless. All bow their little heads in sorrow. Suddenly the prince appears, kisses Snow White, and she comes back to life. They marry and live happily ever after. The cruel stepmother is swept away by a terrible storm. The old form of thought dissolves and disappears forever. The prince symbolizes the divine plan of your life. When he wakes you, you live happily ever after. This is the fairy tale that captivated New York and the whole country. Discover what form of tyranny your cruel stepmother adopts in your subconscious. It's a negative belief that acts in all your areas. We hear people say that good never comes in time for me. I missed so many opportunities. We must reverse this thought and constantly say, I am very awake to my good. I never miss an opportunity. We must stifle the gloomy suggestions of the cruel stepmother. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberation from these forms of negative thinking. Nothing can hinder, nothing can delay the manifestation of the divine plan of my life. The light of lights flows on my path, revealing the open road to realization.